My name is Charlotte Pierce, and if you saw me today, you'd never guess the storm I crawled out of. This morning, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of my office, staring out over the skyline of Chicago. The glass felt cool beneath my fingertips as I adjusted the cuff of my silk blouse, smoothing the fabric like I could smooth away the unease rising in my chest. The city pulsed below me, taxis honking, sirens wailing, people rushing with coffee in hand. But up here, in my corner office, it was quiet. Almost too quiet. Then my phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. The vibration rattled against a crystal pen holder, sharp and insistent, like it was demanding my attention. It was a text from my mother. "Charlotte, we need to talk. It's about him." My throat tightened. Him. I didn't need her to spell it out. After years of silence, I knew exactly who she meant. My stepfather. The man whose temper had once exploded like a grenade in our living room, scattering every piece of innocence I had left. I swallowed hard, pressing my manicured nails into my palm. The world saw me as calm, composed, untouchable. But one message from my mother, one reminder of him, and suddenly I was 17 again, a girl trapped in a house that didn't feel safe. I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. The past I thought I'd buried was clawing its way back. I was 17 the night everything cracked open. Our house looked normal from the outside, a neat, suburban home with white shutters and a swing in the yard. But inside, it was like walking on broken glass. Every step had to be careful, every word measured. Because if I said the wrong thing, if I breathed too loud, my stepfather would explode. His name was Mark, and to everyone else, he was charming. At church, he shook hands and told bad jokes that made people laugh politely. At the grocery store, he carried bags for older women and winked at cashiers. But at home, behind closed doors, he was a different man. That night, I was at the kitchen table, bent over my algebra homework. My hands were sweaty, pencil smudges on the side of my palm. Mom was in the kitchen, nervously rinsing dishes that were already clean. She always did that when she sensed a storm coming. Mark stumbled in, reeking of whiskey. His footsteps were heavy, uneven. The moment he saw me with my books spread out, his face twisted. "Why are the lights on in here? Wasting electricity again," he barked. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words stuck in my throat. My chest felt tight, like invisible hands were squeezing it. I'm just finishing my homework," I whispered. The crash came fast. His hand slammed against the table, rattling the glasses. My pencil rolled onto the floor, clattering against the tile. "You think you're smarter than me?" His voice was low but dangerous, like a growl before a bite. My mom froze at the sink. I wanted her to step in, to say something, but she just stared down at the soapy water, her shoulders trembling. Something inside me cracked. I wasn't just scared. I was furious. Furious that she let him do this. Furious that I had to live like a shadow in my own home. Mark leaned closer, his breath hot with alcohol. "Say one more word, Charlotte. Just one." I clenched my fists under the table, nails digging into my skin. And in that moment, I remembered my grandmother's voice, her words the summer before she passed away. "You are stronger than the walls you're trapped in. One day, you'll walk out, and the world will be yours." I didn't argue back. Not then. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with leftover adrenaline, I made a promise to myself. I would get out. I would never let his voice, his fists, or his anger define who I became. That was the night his violent outburst didn't just scare me. It lit the fire that would eventually set me free. I left home just weeks after graduating high school. No grand farewell, no packed moving truck. Just one battered suitcase, a handful of savings from my part-time job at a diner, and the determination of a girl who refused to be broken. My first apartment was barely more than a shoebox. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's television at night, and the heater coughed more than it worked. But it was mine. For the first time, I could close a door and know that no one would scream on the other side. The first months were brutal. I worked double shifts at a coffee shop, pouring endless cups of burnt espresso with a tired smile. At night, I'd sit on my secondhand mattress with my old laptop propped on my knees, teaching myself digital design through free tutorials. My hands often shook from exhaustion, but every new skill felt like a step toward the life I wanted. It wasn't glamorous. Sometimes, I'd cry quietly into my chipped coffee mug, wondering if I was fooling myself. But then I'd remember Mark's voice, the venom in his words, and I'd straighten my shoulders. His anger had chased me out of that house, but it would never chase me out of my future. One evening, while sketching a logo idea for practice, a woman at the coffee shop noticed my notebook. Her name was Elaine Turner, a sharp-eyed entrepreneur who ran a small marketing firm. She studied my sketches like they were treasure maps. "Did you draw these?" she asked. I nodded nervously, half expecting her to laugh. Instead, she smiled. "You've got real talent. Ever thought about freelancing?" That moment changed everything. Elaine became the first person outside of my grandmother who truly believed in me. She gave me my first small projects, designing business cards, flyers, and simple websites. The pay wasn't much, but every invoice I sent felt like proof that I was building something real. Slowly, the wins began stacking up. My first $500 check. My first client referral. My first night of sleep without the pit of fear in my stomach. But I didn't broadcast my success. Whenever my mother called, her voice careful and guilty, I gave vague answers. "I'm fine. Work's going okay. Nothing big." I didn't want Mark knowing a single thing about me. My silence became my armor. Years passed, and the girl who once sat frozen at a kitchen table turned into a woman running her own small creative agency. My office started in a corner of my apartment, then grew to a shared space, then finally into a glass-walled suite downtown. I was still young, but I was no longer the trembling teenager. I was a businesswoman. Independent. Respected. Safe. And yet, no matter how high I climbed, I never forgot the sound of that table rattling under his fist. It was the memory that fueled every late night, every risk, every boundary I refused to break. His violent outburst had changed my life. But it had also carved a path I never would have found without it. It had been nearly 10 years since I walked out of that house. 10 years of silence, distance, and carefully guarded secrets. But the text from my mother pulled me back like a hook through my chest. She wanted to meet. She said it was urgent. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Part of me wanted to know why she'd reached out now, after all this time. Another part of me wanted to finally face the ghosts I'd been outrunning. The day of the meeting, I chose not to meet at a cafe or her house. Instead, I invited her and, to my shock, she insisted on bringing Mark to my office. When they walked into the lobby, I was standing near the reception desk, greeting a client. My receptionist glanced toward me nervously as the couple approached. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, her shoulders hunched, her hands gripping her purse like a lifeline. Mark, on the other hand, still carried himself with that familiar swagger, though his face was puffier now, his hair streaked with gray. For a moment, he didn't even recognize me. His eyes swept the room, the polished marble floors, the modern art, the sleek company logo etched on glass, before finally landing on me. "Charlotte." His voice cracked with disbelief. I smiled politely. "Welcome. Come in." I led them down the hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing against the hardwood. The conference room doors opened to reveal a space designed carefully over the years, walls lined with framed awards, shelves stacked with design books, and a large oak table that gleamed under pendant lighting. A vase of fresh, white lilies sat in the center, their fragrance subtle but grounding. My mother's mouth parted as she took it all in. "This is yours." I nodded. Every bit of it. Mark let out a short, bitter laugh. "What? You're some kind of secretary here?" I tilted my head, almost amused. "No. I'm the founder, the CEO. This agency is mine." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. My mother's eyes darted to the plaques on the wall, to the company name, Pierce Creative Group, etched in bold letters. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Mark's jaw tightened. He looked around again, as if trying to find cracks in the reality he'd just stepped into. "You're telling me you run all this?" "Yes, I said calmly, folding my hands in front of me. I built it from nothing. From a girl who once couldn't even afford her rent to a woman who now employs 30 people. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "I didn't know. I had no idea." "That's because I didn't tell you." My voice was steady, but inside, my heart hammered like a drum. I kept my life hidden. I didn't want him knowing anything about me. I couldn't risk it. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his bravado slipping. For the first time, he didn't look larger than life. He looked small. "You think you're better than us now?" he muttered. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze sharp. "No, Mark. I don't think I'm better. I just know I'm stronger. And the difference between us is simple. I don't need to hurt anyone to prove my worth." His face darkened, but the weight of the room wasn't on his side anymore. It was on mine. I stood, smoothing the hem of my blazer. "You came here expecting to see a broken girl. Instead, you're looking at the woman she became." For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of his voice, his fists, or his presence. I had built a world so solid, so undeniably mine, that his power simply didn't exist here. And in that silence, with their wide eyes and stunned expressions, the truth settled like thunder after a storm. I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable, before I finally spoke again. "You asked to meet me, Mom. You said it was urgent. So tell me, what brings you here?" Her eyes flickered to Mark, then back to me. She wrung her hands together, twisting the strap of her purse. "Charlotte, things haven't been easy. Mark lost his job last year, and the bills are piling up. We thought maybe you could help." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mark straightened, his pride clearly stung. "We're not begging. But you've clearly got more than enough. Family takes care of family, right?" A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips, but I caught it. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. "Family takes care of family," I repeated slowly. Interesting choice of words, Mark. Because the last time I checked, family doesn't slam their fists on tables and terrify teenage girls into silence. Family doesn't let bruises form, even if they're invisible ones. My mother's cheeks flushed. She looked down, shame burning in her eyes. I took a deep breath, steady and calm. "I'll help, but not without conditions." Both their heads snapped up. "For you, Mom," I began, my voice gentler. "I'll cover your medical expenses and help you get on your feet. But only if you start therapy. Real therapy, not just excuses. You've lived too long in someone else's shadow. You deserve to choose yourself." Tears slid down her cheeks, and she nodded quickly, almost desperately. Then I turned to Mark. My tone shifted, firm as steel. "As for you, there will be no money."
None.
"If you want support from me, it won't be financial. You will get help only if you're willing to face what you've done. That means anger management, therapy, accountability. You will admit the damage you caused, instead of hiding behind your temper." His face turned red, his jaw clenched tight. "You think you can lecture me?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not lecturing. I'm laying out terms. Take them or leave them." The room crackled with tension. For once, he didn't tower over me. For once, I wasn't the child cowering at his voice. I was the woman holding the power, dictating the rules. My mother reached across the table, her voice breaking. "Please, Mark, listen to her." But he only sat back, arms crossed, glaring at me like a cornered animal. I didn't need his agreement that day. What mattered was that the roles had shifted forever. I stood, walking to the window. The city stretched endlessly outside, alive and moving, a world I had built for myself. I turned back to them, my voice steady. "This is my life now. If you want a place in it, it will be on my terms. No more fear. No more silence. No more pretending." The words landed with finality, echoing through the room. For the first time, I wasn't asking. I was deciding. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of that meeting began to show. My mother kept her word. She found a therapist, and for the first time in decades, she started unpacking her pain instead of hiding it. Her voice over the phone grew stronger each week, no longer weighted with constant apology. I could hear her discovering pieces of herself she had buried long ago. Mark, on the other hand, resisted. At first, he dismissed everything I said. But slowly, when no one rushed to rescue him, he began to stumble into the very changes he'd sworn he didn't need. I heard through my mother that he had attended an anger management class, though begrudgingly. Maybe it wouldn't fix him overnight, maybe it never would, but the power dynamic had shifted. He was no longer the man whose shadow ruled my life. And me? I found a strange, unexpected peace. I realized that his outburst all those years ago hadn't just scarred me, it had forged me. Every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every quiet victory was born from that fire. One evening, as I closed my office for the night, I noticed something tucked into my desk drawer. A faded photograph of me and my grandmother, smiling in her garden, the sun catching in her silver hair. I traced the edges of the photo gently, her voice echoing in my memory. "You are stronger than the walls you're trapped in." She had been right. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't a girl defined by fear, or a woman running from her past. I was living proof that even the deepest wounds can bloom into strength. As I stood at the window, the city lights twinkling like stars below, I whispered the truth to myself, a truth that had taken me years to own. His violent outburst didn't destroy me. It gave me the strength to build a life he could never touch. And with that, I turned off the lights and walked out, not just of my office, but of the past that no longer held me.